Hi everyone, and let's talk about such important topic, but the topic that probably nobody ever Googles or tries to find information on YouTube is the welfare of our pets. I'm gonna obviously speak primarily about dogs on this channel, but the principle applies to any pet in our care. The reason why this topic is important, and we as pet parents, pets professionals and stuff like this need to talk more about it, because many problems that arise with our dogs, because my primary specialization is dog behavior, dog training, some complicated cases, some dogs with reactivity, aggression, anxiety and stuff like this. So many of those problems are actually stemming from certain gaps in their welfare. And unfortunately, what we think is good for our pets is not always what is truly good for them. Especially if I'm speaking about North America, certain important, I would say, like basic needs of our pets, our pet dogs, are not covered. They are not covered in households where dogs are truly loved, the dogs are very well cared of, people spend lots of time with their dogs, but some of their basic needs are still neglected due to either like just misinformation that there is in the public. And also I feel like because us pet professionals, sometimes we give you guys conflicted advice. Okay, let's start with the first area. It's basic needs of your dog, and this covers nutrition, environment, and health. And if you have a dog or had dogs before, you probably have lots of information about that, and you probably think you can skip this part, but don't, because there are some things that you'll find new for yourself. And if you're a new dog owner, you just got a puppy, or you're planning to get a puppy, this information will be super valuable to you. We're going to start with nutrition first, and a little disclaimer that I have to make. I'm not your veterinarian. I'm also not your personal behavior specialist. So whatever I say is a general approach. If you have specific questions or specific situation, talk to your vet, talk to your behavior consultant, or you can talk to me as well. You can book me online. But obviously this is clear, but this is a caveat I have to say. So in terms of nutrition, we have food and we have water. Let's start with the water because it's easier to cover. The first thing, your dog has to have access to water all day long, 24/7. And it seems like it's logical, but the biggest mistakes I see people may do, first, they remove water for the night because they feel like, oh, I don't want my dog to drink some water and then want to go pee in the middle of the night. Few things about this. In general, dogs have a very good sense of not peeing in the house unless there are issues, and we can cover it in a second. Also, if dog is following a certain routine, they can actually hold and wait until they wake up in the morning. And let's say if now your dog wants to go pee at 6 a.m. in the morning and this is not convenient for you, you can actually slowly adjust their schedule. Like you can take them at 6 a.m., then you can take them at 6:10, 6:20, 6:30. So like moving it a little bit every day or every other day to the point that when they will get used. Also, you can manipulate the feeding and feeding time so they don't drink as much water at the night, or you can change the what that you feed them. But in general, removing water is not the solution. The solution is if they pee in the middle of the night randomly, not waiting until the morning, maybe they have medical issue, maybe they have UTI, maybe some other physical issues. So go to the vet, explain the situation in detail. I don't know, if needed, look for second opinion, but this is often a not medical issue, because most dogs should be able to wait, especially if it's adult dog, they should be able to hold their pee even if they drink at night. Withholding water is not an option. Sometimes people withhold water in a way when they not intentionally do it, but they just don't think about providing 24/7 access. What do I mean by that? Let's say you have a dog that can roam free in the house, but at certain times of the day, they have to be sequestered to a room or to a part of the house. Let's say, I don't know, let's say you have a cat and or you have another dog, or you're fostering a dog, or you have a, I don't know, children's party, or you have somebody visiting you. There are many reasons why we need sometimes to sequester our dog to another part of the apartment or house. So if they are separated from the main area, make sure they have a bowl in that area. For example, like for the night, you sleep upstairs, you close the baby gate, have a water bowl upstairs and downstairs. Have several water bowls in the house. It's not difficult to have it. If you have issues with dog like spilling it or something like this, there are many solutions. There are water fountains, there are like water feeders, there are different types of bowls, much difficult. For example, if a dog knocks it over, get just a heavy duty ceramic bowl. There are solutions for that. Another way when we accidentally can withhold some water. Let's say some people crate the dog for the night or crate the dog while, I don't know, guests or other animals are in the house. Again, generally you should not be crating your dog for all day long, but there are situations where you maybe need to do it, and baby gates are not the solution. In this case, every crate should have a water bowl. It can be a water bottle, and you can teach your dog to lick from a water bottle. It can be a hanging bowl, or you can get a large enough crate when you have enough space for a mat and a little bit area where you can put a water bowl. Again, if you worry the dog gonna knock it over, there are solutions for that, but most dogs would not knock it over unless they're probably distressed in a crate. So if your dog is knocking over the bowl, probably not the water is the reason, but maybe they're not used to being in a crate. Again, that's not, we're going to cover it here, but the whole idea. Other things you should consider if you hike with your dog, if it's a hot day, if you're like in a coffee shop with your dog, always carry a water bottle with you. If you're doing a training session, if you're playing fetch and stuff like this, also always provide them with water. And of course, I probably should not say it, but I will still say it. The water has to be changed daily. I see sometimes people put a gigantic water bowl that can last long. But technically, if you know the weight of your dog, you can Google how much water they in general drink per day. This is the amount of bowl you should get, so you can change the bowl at least once a day. And you have to wash it as well. And I actually almost forgot another one. It's more rare regarding water, but it still happens. I think I had a client or two who told me that. They said they don't give the dog water all the time because they drink too much. And I would say this is a big concern that you should report to your veterinarian, because if your dog truly drinks too much water, it may be a problem. There are certain medical conditions when drinking too much water, being constantly thirsty, is actually a sign that your dog has some. And maybe you need to have a full a test work done on your dog, like I don't know, maybe full blood panel, maybe some hormones, thyroid, and other stuff. But again, talk up to your veterinarian about that. And if you're freaking out thinking your dog is drinking too much, again, based on activity level and your weight, Google how much water they should drink. On average, obviously, all the dogs are different, and you can measure in the beginning of the day how many cups you give them through the day. And if you feel like, oh, it's like 2-3 times more than they should drink to, and this is something persistent, again, don't make any decisions yourself. Talk to your vet. I'm sure if you have the whole tracker for a week or two how much water intake your dog does, and you bring this information to veterinarian, it will be very helpful for them to understand and figure out what's going on. Either it's okay, your dog is just a drinker, or it can be a sign of some medical issue and you want to catch it early, because if it's too late, it's going to be a problem in the future. Next part of the nutrition is obviously food, and here I'm not going to tell you what food to feed your dog or what brand to buy. We're going to talk about general approach. First, you have to understand, based on your dog's size, activity levels, health levels, how many times per day you should feed them. The biggest mistakes are either people feed the dog too often. For example, they let them have a food bowl sitting all day so they can graze during the day. This is probably not the best idea. Usually dogs should be fed on a particular schedule. And the biggest reason is because if you have a very fixed schedule on feeding, you also have a very predictable schedule when they pee and poop. So if your dog has random potty accidents in the house, they can pee or poop in the house, and you're free feeding them, that can be the reason. So start with giving them appropriate diet, let's say 2 times a day or 3 times a day. The general approach is that smaller dogs should be fed more often, bigger dogs can be fed once or twice a day. Again, talk to your veterinarian, depends on your diet and your situation. Some dogs who are, for example, very food hungry all the time, or they scavenging on the streets, let's say you take your dog for a walk and they immediately start like hoovering all the garbage outside. And if this is the same dog you only feed once a day, this can actually be the reason why they're more excited about finding scraps outside. These dogs sometimes should be fed more often in small increments. But again, this is based on your behavior situation and whatever your veterinarian says. In terms of food, the general approach is buy the best food you can afford with your budget. Obviously, there are better foods, there are cheaper foods, but in the end of the day, we all have certain budgets and certain financial situations, so we just should buy whatever we can afford, and if we can afford something better, do that. Again, I'm not going to name brands, but the general approach is that some cheaper brands have too many fillers. They don't have meat ingredients. They mostly have some corn or some like byproducts and stuff like this. But this is not my territory. This is veterinarian territory. So that was not my territory, but what is a little bit of my territory, since sometimes I have puppies for training and I usually see how people feed them. With puppies especially, you should follow a certain diet. Don't jump too quick to feeding your puppy only like twice a day. It's going to be a very big issue in terms of their development stages, how they feed, how they treat food. They're going to be always too hungry, too food motivated, and it's going to be hard for you to train them if they're super hungry because they're going to be snatching food too fast. Also, puppies should eat the puppy-specific formula, not adult formula. Again, your veterinarian will explain to you better, but just trust me, for their development, it's always better because they should receive more fats in their diet versus more calories in their diet versus protein, because this will not only influence their physical state, but can also influence sometimes their behavior state, but we're not going to go there right now. Okay, let's talk about food from the training standpoint. There are different camps. I would say always whatever is on the extreme end of these camps is usually not a good idea. One extreme end is to use food as a motivation for a puppy or a dog to be obedient, and sometimes this means depriving dog of food. So for example, like some board and train facilities unfortunately use it, some correction or balance trainers unfortunately use it as well when they need the dog to submit, to listen to them, to be obedient. They would not give dog the food unless it's a training session or unless the dog is behaving. So sometimes they would even starve dogs for a couple of days in order for dogs to be obedient. Of course, if the dog is not receiving food on a regular basis and only receiving food from this particular trainer, eventually the dog would really love this training and would do anything for food. So it would look like, oh, look how well I trained your dog. Although it can show you some quick results, but long term it's gonna ruin your dog's relationship with food. I'm not gonna scare you they're gonna get food aggressive or something, but there are some behavior issues that I observe among my clients that stem from the fact that when they were puppies, when they were board trained or just trained by another trainer who told the owner hey, just don't give your dog food until they listen to you. And by this, I mean not give them food for a couple of days. This is not a good solution. It will backfire. Don't do it. And even if you don't just talk about training standpoint, just from animal welfare standpoint, this is animal abuse and neglect. So this was one extreme, people depriving dog of food for days, not giving dog food until the dog submits and stuff like this. Again, we're not talking you skipping one lunch. We're not talking about you giving your dog half a meal and using the rest of the meal for training. We're not talking about this. We're talking about skipping days, skipping several meals. But then there is another extreme. I don't know where this extreme came from, but now I hear on the other spectrum of the dog training community when people say your dog should eat this amount of food on this schedule, you can't manipulate that. God forbid you use some of the dog food for training. All the food the dog should eat from their regular meal time. If you try to use some of this meal for training purposes, this is very stressful for the dog, it's abusing, blah, blah. Okay, this is not true. I'm just going to say it straight up. I'm going to explain these nuances in a bit, but the reason why it's not true. When we say something like this, and before deciding what's stressful or what's abusive for the dog, we need to think, from the scientific standpoint, from the standpoint how digestive system works in the dogs, from the evolution standpoint, how dogs were feeding themselves before they became our pets, how dogs in a wild, which are some wild breeds, or some dogs who are feral dogs, or dogs who are village dogs, basically street dogs, how they're feeding. So the way how they're feeding, they would scavenge, then they would find something, eat it, fill up their stomach, and then who knows when they're gonna get the next meal. Their digestive system was created the way to, hunt something, eat it, and then maybe not have food for a while, sometimes for a big while, and they would still survive. There are other animals, for example, like horses, they have to eat all the time, or like cows, because their digestive system meant to constantly consume. Dogs are not like that. They don't need to be constantly eating. They're not gonna die, or they're not gonna stress out. Nothing bad gonna happen if they skip a meal. We don't need to freak out about that. We just need to be logical and reasonable. So let's discuss what is reasonable. Let's say I'm training a dog, and let's say I'm using a certain protocol or a certain training setup, or I'm doing lots of training sessions throughout the day, and I need lots of rewards, food rewards. I'm not going to use training treats. First of all, it's too many calories. Second, I don't want to give my dogs those things because they're probably not good for their digestion, because usually the treats should not constitute more than 10% of the calorie intake. So, I'm kind of limited. So basically, either I don't do the training, or I have to look for other reinforcements, which is possible. Like if the dog, for example, toy motivated, but not all dogs are. Or if I can use environment as a reinforcement. But again, for some particular training, for example, you're training a puppy or you're training a small dog, using kibble for training is easy because it's very simple. You take it out of your pouch, give it to your dog, and perfect. But what do you do if your dog is small, or if it's a puppy? They limited how much food they can do. It is normal to take some portion of their daily meal and use it for training. So what I would suggest to my clients, and what I would suggest to you, let's say you have a smaller dog, they eat 1 cup of kibble per day. So, and let's say you feed them, 2 times a day, like half a cup each. So what you can do, you can give them half a cup in the morning of their regular portion, and then another half a cup, put in a Ziploc and use it for training during the day. Whatever is left, you give them as their dinner. Or if you feed your dog, let's say 3 times a day, and usually you do lots of training midday, let's say you work from home or you have a flexible schedule, then feed them normal breakfast, normal dinner, and use them lunch portion for training. Whatever is left, just give them, as a normal meal. We're talking not skipping meals. We're not talking I'm going to remove their lunch, and maybe if I do training, then I give them food. If I don't, you understand. So they still receive the same amount of food, but either they're going to receive some of it as a regular meal in their food bowl, or they receive it from you during training. Especially if you deal with new dogs you just adopted, dogs who are young dogs, like puppies, using their food as a training reward, even rewarding you for some small things. For example, you go for a walk, every time they look at you, every time they come back to you, every time they behave, you just give them a small kibble. This is a great way to build relationship, to build trust with dogs. So, for example, as a pet professional, sometimes I work with dogs directly, so it's not the owner of the dog who works with them, it's me. So I have to go in the house, pick up the dog, take them for a walk, and do some training during that session. And what I usually do during the first week of my session with this dog, I would give them so many rewards, and just in 1 week or 2, the dog starts immediately listening to me. So again, I don't need to withdraw their food. I don't need to deprive them of food. I just use their food to build our relationship. Again, I don't use food as bribe. I use food as reward for some good behavior, some good choices, and stuff like this. Okay, so we agreed that it's okay to use a portion of your dog food during training, but it's not okay to deprive them of meals until they listen to you. Another part of nutrition that is actually technically a little bit or a lot, depends what you do, can be animal abuse, is feeding your dog human food. Cookies, chips, chocolates, candies, and stuff like this. Again, I'm not veterinarian, so I'm gonna be a little bit probably more flexible with it. If once in a while, once in a blue moon, you give your dog a small portion of something that's safe for them to eat from your table, this is probably not going to be a big disaster. But feeding them human food on a regular basis, giving them something from your plate during every meal is not good, because some of the ingredients are toxic for them. Some ingredients can actually ruin their stomach. You're also adding unnecessary calories to that dog meal and stuff like this. So if you don't want to spend too much on a medical bill in the future, don't do it. And also because dogs, the household dogs, usually eat more than the average, I don't know, street dog or village dog would eat. Many dogs are actually overfed. So when you already give them probably too much of their regular meal, and then you add some calories from chips, cookies, and stuff on top, you basically ruining their health. And dogs, they rely on us. They don't know what's good, what's bad for them. Like sometimes people say like, oh, my dog loves it, that means it's good for them. Unfortunately, it's not. It's like having a 1-year-old baby and just giving them random things that are not good for them and saying like, oh, they seem to be liking it, why not? So we're responsible, the same how parents are responsible for children, the same way we're dog owners, dog guardians, we are responsible for our pets, and we should make decisions what's good for them. Eating human food on a regular basis is not good for them. And I'm gonna say it here, although it's a little bit in a health territory. So your dog should eat the type of food, the amount of food, based on their energy levels, based on their activity levels, based on their age and stuff like this. And overfeeding your dog is technically neglect and animal abuse as well. I do sometimes have clients whose dogs are overweight, and again, I know I already said it 10 times and you probably know it by this, but I have to say it and remind you, I'm not your veterinarian, so don't trust my advice. But having an overweight dog is not having a happy dog. Like sometimes people tell me like, but it's okay, but at least my dog is happy. But you have to understand, there is more risk they're gonna get some things, like they can get diabetes. If they're super heavy, overweight, they're running and moving a lot, there is more tear on their muscles and their joints. So having a dog who has a very good weight is important for them, because you are responsible for their health. Your dog, again, doesn't know what's good, what's bad for them. It's very easy to understand whether your dog is overfed or underfed. I'm going to put this chart on the screen, so this will give you general advice, and then when next time you have a vet visit, you can discuss with your vet. Unfortunately, most people to whom I slightly hinted that maybe they should talk to their vet about, figuring out whether the dog is overfed, they would always become defensive and tell me like, oh no, my dog is fine. Again, I'm not saying it to you to offend you. It's not because I'm like, sometimes people take it too far and say like, oh, it's not body positive. Unfortunately, it's animal neglect. We can't say that, oh, our dogs are allowed to be in any weight, because we are the one providing food. If you see dogs, feral dogs, if you see animals in the wild, for some reason, animals who tend to themselves, they never overweight. So in this case, we have to understand. So if the normal environment, the animals have a certain, because there is a certain weight range they get, and they only get overweight in our care, we can't say that this is like okay for them. That means it's we humans doing something to be, for the dogs to be what they are not there, what they are not when they are not with us. So this is very important. This is, please don't get it wrong. It's not about body positivity. Such things doesn't exist for animals. Having a dog who's overweight and not doing anything about it, not consulting your veterinarian, not maybe consulting a nutritionist, because sometimes being overweight means your dog maybe has some, again, physical and medical issues. So not doing anything about it, not addressing it, is unfortunately is neglect and animal abuse, and goes against animal welfare. Okay, let's talk about health. I already told many times, and you're probably already laughing. I'm going to say again, I'm not your veterinarian. In terms of health, I'm going to address only things that are important from training and behavior standpoint. Rule number 1, if your dog is sick or doesn't feel well, or maybe has injury or something like this, please don't do any training. If you have a trainer, skip the session, reschedule the session. If you go to the training school or like any type of like sport activity, don't do this. Many people sometimes feel like, oh, but my dog is fine. They're not, they're not complaining. But again, dogs often, especially something about pain in dogs, dogs can often like suffer from some pain or injuries, and they will still like act like they're normal. It is our task to pay attention to them and take care of them and protect them from more damage, from from getting worse. Unfortunately, I did have clients whose dogs were sick. They would limp, or I don't know, they would clearly like lethargic or something like this, and people still like wanted like, oh, let's have like some kind of sessions. But what I'm trying for you to think at this point, like imagine you are super sick and you need to go to school and pass exam, or go to work and stuff like this. Yeah, sometimes we humans, we force ourselves to do it, but we humans should not be at work or in school when we are sick, and our animals who actually didn't choose to go to training especially should not do this. So this rule number one: if your dog is sick, don't do any training, not only because it's not fair to them, but trust me, they're not going to learn anything. Their learning abilities drop significantly if they're not feeling well, so you're not going to get much use from this training, and it's just pointless. Another important part from like behavior standpoint, that if you deal with a veterinary behaviorist, dog trainer who specializes in behavior cases, and behavior consultants, like any type of that, please report all the information about your dog health. Sometimes people withhold some information, then later they say like, oh yeah, by the way, my dog XYZ. This is just my cry for you, but in general, not only you should report it to people who are who should know about this, but also you should pay attention. Especially you should pay attention if certain problems persist for a long time, because sometimes I do have clients who say like, oh yeah, my dog is allergic, but they were always been like that, or like, oh, my dog is constantly licking their paws to the point then they have like a rashes or hot spot, but they were always like that. Or, oh yeah, my dog always has stomach issues, like a loose stool, but it's always like that. Again, normal healthy dog should not have all those things. So if you have all those things and you're already working with veterinarian, kudos to you, you're doing the right thing, because this is something that should be concerning. Let's say if you went to one veterinarian, they didn't find anything, maybe look for second opinion. Sometimes maybe another specialist can look at your dog with a fresh eye and find something else, or suggest other tests and stuff like this. But if your dog has a persistent health issues, whatever they are, you should, as a guardian of that dog, you should take care of it. You can't just say like, oh, they have it, and I don't know why they have it. They just are always like this. Also, the reason why sometimes certain things can be a sign of a bigger issue. Maybe your dog has a certain medical condition that manifests in this particular issue. Maybe sometimes it's good to do like a full blood work, like full, tests done on your dog to figure out what's going on with them, because in the end of the day, if you don't fix it now, you'll have to fix it later when it's more expensive in terms of veterinary care. And again, from animal standpoint, they can't go to the vet, they can't take care of themselves, and sometimes the issues they have can be us. We are the reasons, especially if we don't provide them with appropriate food or something else we didn't do right. So it's very important for us to take care of them. And if, let's say, we're taking a new dog, the first thing we should actually ask ourselves, do we have enough, financial resources to provide for them veterinary care? Because each dog should go to the, vet checks up every year. Certain breeds that are prone to being sick, they should, get like as many tests as possible. Because we know, for example, certain breeds like German Shepherds or Labs, they get hip dysplasia a lot, or like some smaller breeds like Chihuahuas, they also get like, or for example, Dachshunds always get like issues with their spine, so they need to be checked up as well. So if you notice anything changing in behavior of your dog, this can be also a concern. For example, your dog was always like friendly, happy-go-lucky, but they started snapping on people. Maybe they beat somebody. Maybe they started showing aggression when they didn't show it before. So if something was good with your dog for years and they're getting worse in terms of behavior, sometimes the health can be the reason. And in this case, the best approach is to go to veterinary behaviorist. Any behavior changes that are abrupt usually stem from the same way, like if your dog was always good and never peed in the house, and then they started peeing in the house in the middle of the night, always consider like health reasons. If your dog, I don't know, was always good Let's say they were always taking rides with you. You could take your dog and drive somewhere else, and now they're reluctant to go in a car. Maybe check, maybe they have orthopedic issues, maybe they are, getting early arthritis or something like this, so they have hard time jumping in a car. That's why they refuse to go there. So if behavior changes, always look at the medical side. I would say like in 80% of cases, that's the reason. Few more things that also benefit to dogs' basic needs and medical welfare. I already said about the regular checkups, but the same obviously comes to vaccination, flea treatment, and stuff like this. So we need to provide for our dogs like life that prevents like certain health issues, injuries, and stuff like this. Like, since I already mentioned about the healthy weight, I'm not going to mention it here, but yeah, it's very important for the health of your dog. It's not just a general look or something I want you to do. It's a health related. Another thing that's important, that if you deal with breeding or you buy a dog from a breeder, this is also part of the health responsible breeding. What it means, I think I already have a video on my channel about the breeders. If I do, I will link it down below. Yeah, it's very important to understand that not all breeders are ethical, not all breeders are responsible. And from health standpoint, what it means, sometimes they breed animals who are unhealthy, so obviously they produce offsprings that are unhealthy too. So ideally, if you deal with the breeder, ask them if they did, tests, DNA tests on their, like on the couple that they're breeding, and make sure they don't have any things that they pass on their offsprings. Another thing, what conditions they keep those dogs in. Sometimes they can be also neglected, especially some breeders, like backyard breeders who just do it for money. They keep dogs in very unhealthy conditions, and they also keep puppies in very unhealthy conditions. For example, I had several clients with puppies who had multiple Giardia issues. Like, it was not one client, not two clients, I got multiple clients. And especially when we talk about dogs having Giardia in puppyhood, most of these dogs are on quarantine in the house. That means they came from the breeder. That means those dogs who were the parents also probably had those parasites. The dogs were not dewormed. And this is a horrible, horrible situation, because sometimes these people actually pay lots of money to those dogs to buy them from a breeder, and they end up with unhealthy dogs. So remember that when you're getting a dog from a breeder, your breeder is responsible obviously for the health of your future puppy, but sometimes they don't do it, so it becomes your responsibility. And maybe if you're a breeder yourself, you're watching this video, remember that you should breed only healthy animals. If animals are unhealthy from physical standpoint or even mental standpoint in terms of behavior, do not breed those animals, no matter how much money you lost on this breeding pair, but you are ethically not supposed to do this, and it's absolutely unfair to the animal, unfair to people who are going to acquire those puppies. And another thing, breeding dogs more than once a year, it's actually very bad for their health. So if you're a breeder or somebody getting a dog from a breeder, make sure they're not overbreeding that mom too much, because unfortunately it happens with some greedy breeders. And just in general, in terms of health, I'm just going to say the last thing. If anything changes in your dog behavior, or your dog does something weird that people sometimes consider funny, for example, chasing their tails non-stop, biting on their own tail, chewing on their legs, chewing on their paws or their sides to the point when it becomes too bad, this is a health concern. And there are many other weird things that dogs do that are actually not funny, but medical concerns. So what I would suggest to do, if you see your dog doing something, I mean, we're not talking one time, but doing something very weird on a regular basis. Let's say they started doing it and then they did it once and then the second time, and then it became something repetitive. Please make a video of it, show it to your veterinarians, do some research. If needed, go to veterinary behavior consultant and stuff like this, because sometimes it's not nothing. We think, oh, it's just nothing. My dog is just standing and facing the wall. This may mean they have some issues with their... It's not nothing. It's actually, unfortunately, can mean something. And also there is a mental health, but I'm going to cover it in another part, but I just going to say it quickly. Such things as anxiety, I don't know, hyperactivity, problem with self-control, sort of phobias of new things like neophobia, phobias of sounds or certain objects. These things that exist in humans, and in terms of humans' mental health, they also exist in dogs. Obviously, sometimes people over-exaggerate, and sometimes they look at a dog and think it's a human and try to, like put the same human problems on a dog. It doesn't always replicate this way, but some of the things actually exist. If your dog is too fearful, too anxious, they get scared of everything, they're very restless, they don't sleep, like you see, like there is lots of anxiety and stress in a dog. Again, talk to the veterinary behaviorist, or at least to behavior consultant that's going to refer you later to veterinary behaviorist. Something is going on with the dog and they need to be helped in terms of their mental health. Okay, next one. This is a very long video. Let's talk a little bit about the environment. I can say a lot about it, but let's try to cover the basic stuff. The first one, the biggest pet peeve of mine, especially here in North America, even here in California, very progressive state, but still many people rely on crates. And in my opinion, it's okay to, not okay, it's actually good to crate train your dog in case if you need to travel, in case if you, I don't know, need to drop your dog off at the vet and they have to be in a crate, or maybe they go to the groomer and they need to be temporary in a crate. So there is not a big issue if the dog has to be in a crate sometimes in their life and they actually train, maybe you need to travel and they need to be in a travel crate. So it's very good to teach them to be okay and to be comfortable. But unfortunately, keeping your dog in a crate most of the day, like let's say you go to work, put your dog in a crate in the morning and only let them out in the evening, this is animal abuse. This is not appropriate for the dogs. Unfortunately, I don't know who came up with this idea. Is it other trainers? Is it some, I don't know, maybe it's a marketing as the usual plot. Somebody create this idea that dogs are dense animals, so they like to have like a little, like a crate where they can sleep. Like this is not true. I mean, partially not true. The time when the dog, let's say like dogs in the wild, like any canines in the wild, they only will use or primarily will use den when they have puppies. So when they need a protected area, when they need to protect their offspring, yeah, they would use a den because it's much easier to keep it like secure. Adult animals, they would just sleep out and about. Also the way how they sleep, they don't sleep like for 12 or 6 hours straight. They would sleep a little bit, they would wake up, move around, fall asleep again, change the spot, stretch a little bit, go back to bed. So your dog, the reason why crates are not good, there are two things, main things. The first, your dog needs to be able to move and change spots. They're not meant as a species to be in the same spot. Even birds not meant to be in cages. That's why this guy is often cage-free, which creates lots of problems for us because he's chewing on things he's not supposed to chew on or gets into trouble. But this is what it takes to have an animal in your care. Sometimes I hate when he just goes to the same spot and start chewing on the door frames and other inappropriate things. But I have that was my choice to get him. And like, unfortunately, as much as sometimes we do timeouts and he goes in his cage when he does too much damage to the house or he's in especially naughty mode, but even he doesn't spend all day in a cage. Imagine when dogs spend all day in a cage and they're not supposed to be. So what would be appropriate? So instead of keeping your dog in a crate, address the issue, because there is probably issue why you're keeping the dog in a crate. For example, they destroy things in the house. Maybe your dog has separation anxiety or some kind of like distress when you leave them alone. Maybe talk to a behavior consultant or a separation anxiety specialist. Maybe you can actually do training to get them used and to get them comfortably stay alone. Or maybe you just have to puppy-proof or dog-proof the house. Maybe you can sequester them to like parts of your house where they can do less damage and you just dog-proof, puppy-proof that area. What can be the other reasons people keep in a crate? Let's say you have guests over and your dog is not friendly with people. In this case, if it's a limited amount of time, if they provided some lots of physical and mental enrichment before they were put in a crate, then it's fine. Like if it's not on an everyday basis, when it's like sometimes, I would say it's appropriate if you're like having a certain issue. But again, if you're choosing between putting your dog in a different room and putting your dog in a crate, always choose putting them in a room. At least they have a space to move. If you do use a crate, make sure it's appropriate size. 90% of times when I go to my client's home and I see a crate, in 90% of times it's smaller than it's supposed to be. So your dog should be able to stand up comfortably, stretch. They should be able to lay down. So let's say this is your dog. If they lay down and stretch their legs, they should not be cramped in a crate. They should be able to turn around in a crate without so basically fully extended. They should be able to turn around in a crate, stand up without touching the top, and lay down stretched. I often see crates too small. Sometimes people put too much stuff inside the crate. They put these crazy beddings and toys and pillows and stuff like this. Most often than not, your dog probably doesn't need that stuff. Have a nice orthopedic foam that is dense and very cushy, but not too big, so at least it doesn't take too much space in a crate. And don't fill up the crate with 10 or 20 toys. Your dog doesn't need it there. Maybe give them something to chew on, or give them a Kong or something like this, yeah, so they can keep let's say you're putting them for an hour or two, so at least they have something to do before they fall asleep. And also, if you have to crate your dog during the day, remember that at this day they should get a full walk before that. So let's say I have guests arriving in the afternoon and I need to put my dog in a crate for some reason. Maybe I don't have another room, maybe I live in a studio apartment, whatnot. So that means this day I will take the dog for a long, maybe 1.5 hour walk, maybe take them to run around, get off leash time, and then I put them in a crate to take a nap. So if you're putting your dog in a crate when they're bored and they want exercise, of course, they're probably not gonna benefit from that. But this is not part of this. We're talking about environment. So we talked about crates, appropriate size. If you're choosing between two sizes, always size up. It's always good to have a bigger one than the smaller one. Okay, the maximum time you should crate your dog is 4 hours, but again, don't do it on an everyday basis. And I would only do 4 hours if you took a long walk before that. Otherwise, maybe do an hour so that at least they can take a nap. For some dogs, from behavior standpoint, we do use crates sometimes. There are some dogs who they have so much restlessness, anxiety, hyperactivity that they don't sleep during the day. In this case, we do forced crating. So let's say we're going to take them for a walk, crate them for 30 minutes, maybe 1 hour after each walk. We're going to do a training session, then crate them. So at least they will give them time to be idle and actually learn how to rest and relax. This will also be helpful for dogs who follow the owner around the apartment. So basically, if your dog doesn't sleep during the day, this is actually something I should have mentioned in a health part, I don't know, maybe mental state. Yeah, so if your dog doesn't sleep during the day or have very light sleeper, constantly wakes up and follows you, in this case, maybe it's not a bad idea. But again, in this case, I would choose to use baby gates, because baby gates provide you enough, let's say if you need to sequester your dog in a kitchen while you're in the living room with guests, this is a much better solution than keeping them in a crate. So always choose secluded area or sequestering them in some parts of the house versus a crate. You don't need a crate if you can do that. If you say oh, my dog will jump over the fence or a baby gate, there are tall fences. Sometimes if they see you in there, they're gonna start crying and barking. When I'm filming this video, my bird is just having the craziest day in their life, and I feel half of this time I'm telling you what not to do, I'm actually about to cage him, because it's impossible to film a video sometimes because he just does even more random stuff. So I feel you, I know what it is. Again, if we do it once, it's okay, because our mental health matters too, but if we do it on a regular basis, it's animal abuse. So going back to what I was saying, sometimes what sometimes also can happen, if the dog sees you through the fence, they can get more antsy. So you can cover the baby gate with a blanket so they can't see you. When you reduce the visual, they're probably going to be less alert. Another issue that I come across sometimes with my clients, they say oh, I can't leave my dog in another room. I can't leave them behind the gate because they're going to go crazy, they're going to bark and jump. So in this case, crate is still not the solution, because your dog has a problem. Either it's separation anxiety or they're unable to, they have like a problems with self-control, so they are unable to control themselves when they see you and they want to go to you, but they get super frustrated because they're unable to go to you. So in this case, yeah, it's a maybe longer route, but in this case, you will benefit from actually teaching them to be alone. And it can be done with desensitization protocols and other like protocols that teach dogs to, how to prevent separation anxiety. You can teach your dog to self-control. You can teach them to wait for something to happen. And if you think like, but why would I teach all that if I can just push them in a crate and everything is resolved? No, because by teaching them those things, you're going to also resolve other issues that I guarantee you have with your dog. Because if you have to crate your dog for a longer time, you definitely have lots of issues that the dog has. And you're going to be so thankful to yourself if you resolve those issues as well. So sometimes, instead of fixing what on the surface, dig deeper, fix what's in the bottom, and then whatever is on the surface will just go away. In terms of environment, other things that I often see as a problem, your dog should have their own space, like a dog bed. Even if you say like, oh, my dog sleeps on the couch, oh, my dog just sleeps on the floor. Regardless, they should have a comfortable, nice bed. And this bed should not be something like Pinterest friendly, Instagrammable and stuff like this. Often the beds have like really nice, like a fluffy decor or like a nice fluffy like surrounding area, but the mat itself is so flat. It's sometimes it's just already too flat and you need to replace it, or sometimes it doesn't even have a cushion in the bottom. So ideally you should have like a thick cushion like that. The dog has to be large enough for your dog to stretch out completely. So if your dog is constantly curled in there, maybe your bed is too small. So the bed has to be large enough. Ideally, place this bed in like the same area where people hang out. So if you're mostly spending time in the living room, put a dog bed in the living room. If you sometimes hang out in the other room, let's say you have an office, put a second bed in there. So wherever you hang out, maybe you have a dining table in the kitchen, put a dog bed there as well, because this will help your dog to have a designated area. So instead of begging for food under the table, they go to their dog bed, and you can actually teach them to do it. I promise you, if this dog is comfortable enough, your dog will spend time there. I have actually an anecdote. So I have one of my regular clients who often stays with us. And usually when I take some of my behavior clients to stay with us, I usually ask people to give the dog bed as well, because I want dog to have the piece of their house, a piece of their home in my place and there, so they feel more comfortable, so they know they're not being like completely away from their house. And this client said like, my dog doesn't really sleep in a dog bed, so I don't even care about that. And I told them like, you know what, when they're staying with me, they're always sleeping in my dog's bed, because my dog has several beds in the house. So I'm like, so it's not that they don't sleep in the dog bed, it's just they don't have a nice bed. Yeah, so if it's a comfortable, very like a thick mattress, this is the best. Little life hack here. So if you have a larger dog, and dog beds can be expensive, especially the good ones, maybe look online, especially in a second-hand spaces. Maybe somebody getting rid of the baby mattress. Sometimes they call it crib mattress, because they, let's say if somebody had a baby, they don't need this crib mattress anymore. They're probably gonna like sell it very cheap, but those beds are usually having very nice cushions, because you don't need any fancy decor. You just need a just need a like thick mattress, and then you can just cover it in a blanket or something, and you're gonna have a nice bed for your dog. Yeah, so this is the tip. So your dog should have a bed, and for certain cases, I would say think of the placement of this dog bed. If you have several dogs, don't put dog beds together, put them apart. So first of all, dogs can choose where to lay down, and also if they want to have a rest from each other, they're separated. Second thing, if you have a dog who is very anxious, especially a small dog who can be a little bit weirded out when people pass by, especially dogs who don't like strangers, don't like guests, don't like people, have this bed somewhere in a corner or somewhere where they're protected from like involuntary connections from other people, when they're protected from other people approaching them. And also make make sure they're not on a way, because what sometimes can happen, and I think I had a couple of clients like that, they would say every time we pass by the dog bed, they would growl, or sometimes they would attack people's legs, and this is often happening. This is usually has either behavior issue, or dogs can actually have medical issue why they don't like people approaching them. So if this is something about your dog, they started attacking people when they pass by, check with the vet. Anyway, and then I asked this client, I was like, okay, where's the dog bed? And they showed me the dog bed was where in a hallway where people constantly pass by when they go to the kitchen, when they go in another room. So the solution was just let's put the dog in a corner when nobody will pass by. So it will give the dog more peace of mind. They can just relax instead of being constantly alert who is passing by and what's going to happen, because sometimes smaller dogs are just afraid somebody's going to step on them. Another thing, some dogs actually like a placement when they can observe the territory. So when they can see who enters the house, they can see the windows, they can see the couch. So sometimes this is also important, because sometimes people put a dog bed somewhere like in a kitchen or somewhere behind the couch or somewhere where the dog cannot see you. And some dogs like actually to see you. Again, play with the placement. It will greatly depend on your situation. Another part about the environment that's important from the training, behavior standpoint, and also animal welfare. If your dog is very active at home, let's say you like to play around, you like to roughhouse, chasing ball and stuff like this, make sure you have carpets or rugs. If you have like a very, if you have hard floors, if you have slippery floors, don't play in those areas where your dogs, especially with puppies, especially with senior dogs or dogs who are prone to like orthopedic issues, because this can be a big issue. And this is something about America. Many apartments and houses here have carpets, which is a little bit unusual from where I come from. And I actually despise the carpets. But at the same time, as a dog professional and also a person who has a senior dog, I'm like, as much as I hate those carpeted apartments and houses, but it's actually very good for our dogs. So if you have carpeted apartment, you actually like it. If your dog is senior, you need as many rugs as possible. If if your dog is active, please make sure they're not running on hard floors. And again, I'm not going to go into details. Sometimes dogs even develop certain behavior issues because when they're on these floors, they're like very uncomfortable. And another anecdotal evidence, sometimes people say like, hey, ask my dog to sit, and they don't sit. Or they would sit and they would get up immediately, and I can't train them to sit still for a long time. And then I tell the person, look at your dog, look at their feet. So the dog tries to sit down, and then their feet are just sliding apart. So it's extremely difficult for them to sit on a slippery floor. So when you ask your dog to sit, let's say part of training I'm usually doing with some of the hyper dogs, we train the dog to wait every time something is about to happen. So we slowly teach them to learn how to deal with frustration when you want something but you can't get it, and we practice it during the day in different situations so the dog can actually learn this skill. And one of the skills is actually to be able to wait when you get them ready for a walk. So instead of running around, barking, jumping, just going back and forth, you take time to get them ready for a walk, and you ask the dog to sit while you're putting your shoes on, while you're putting the harness on, while you're looking for your keys. So you ask the dog to sit. Again, we do this specifically for dogs who are very hyper and they get extremely antsy and go crazy for a walk. So instead, we give them something else to do. Otherwise, if your dog is calm, you don't need to do it. But every time we do this training, I always point to my clients, pay attention to the floor. So if you ask the dog to sit minutes on a slippery, hard floor, this is unfair. First of all, it's from health-wise, it's not good for them, but also, obviously, they're not going to do it. Make sure they're sitting on a rug, make sure they're sitting on some small carpet or a blanket or something that's comfortable for them to stay on. The same can actually happen when you take some dogs to the restaurant and you want your dog to, be calm in a restaurant. Sometimes you need to bring a blanket or a small rug or a towel or something for them to lay on. So this was a very long video, but this covers the basic needs of your dog. In the next video, we're gonna cover a few more parts of the animal welfare, which covers the mental health and basically whether your dog is happy or bored, whether your dog is fulfilled or just doesn't know what to do with themselves and nothing happens in their life. Basically, they're just deprived of any life experience and species-appropriate activities. And also we're going to talk about situations that we put our dogs in, like fear, distress, any types of situations that they are unable to deal with, but we as guardians and pet parents and people who don't want to abuse our animals or neglect animals are supposed to provide them better situations. But this is something we're going to talk in the next video, since this video is already too long. I hope you learned something useful. If you did, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, see you in my next video.
Sunlight, love, heart.